You staged it! You child abuser! You child abuser! Where's Jimmy Savile? Where's Jimmy Savile? Get back! Traitor! You child abuser!
Pedophile protectors!
You pedophile!
Keir
Shame! 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 Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Keir Starmer walked onto the stage anticipating applause, but instead he was greeted with what every politician dreads: boos, hostility, and a crowd that had completely turned on him. This wasn't a few scattered hecklers. It was loud, raw frustration. At first he tried to carry on, pretending nothing was wrong, but the noise only intensified. Expressions in the audience shifted from indifferent to openly enraged. Some shook their heads in dismay, others shouted him down. Any chance of a positive reception disappeared. This wasn't just resistance, it was public embarrassment. What went so wrong? Why did his own backers turn against him so harshly? Let's break it down. As Labour's leader, Keir Starmer probably assumed he was addressing friendly ground, a room that would at least listen, maybe even applaud. But the moment he arrived, the mood felt off. No smiles, no energy, only crossed arms, doubtful looks, and quiet mutters. Even before he spoke a word, it was obvious this wouldn't be the welcome he was counting on.
Every stage during this crisis, my approach has been driven by the need to respond to both these tragedies, to stand by the right to self-defence of any nation which suffers terrorism on this scale, alongside the basic human rights of innocent Palestinians caught once again in the crossfire.
As he began his speech, he touched on the economy, repeating the usual lines about fiscal responsibility and Labour's vision for growth. But instead of nods of approval, he faced blank expressions. Pressing on, he turned to Brexit, attempting the near-impossible act of appeasing both Leave and Remain supporters. It fell flat. Murmurs rippled through the room. Eyes rolled. Someone in the back muttered under their breath. Then came the real flashpoint: his stance on the Israel-Gaza conflict. He rejected calls for a ceasefire, insisting it wasn't the right option. That's when it happened. The first boo, sharp, loud, cutting through the hall. Starmer faltered, visibly unsettled. Before he could recover, another voice rang out, then another. Suddenly, it wasn't a few critics, it was a chorus of disapproval. He had lost them. The room wasn't just doubtful, it had turned hostile. From that moment, everything began to unravel. The atmosphere grew heavier, shifting from tense silence to open defiance. At first, there were only scattered whispers and uneasy glances. But after the first boo, everything changed. The low chatter swelled into open complaints. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others leaned in close, trading frustrated remarks. Discontent that had lingered quietly now erupted. Starmer tried to push forward, raising his voice as if confidence could drown out the noise. It didn't work. The louder he spoke, the more the crowd resisted. Questions were hurled at him, demanding clarity. A woman near the front stood up and shouted, What about the children's care? Others quickly echoed her anger. He froze, caught. In a moment of doubt, then tried to wrestle back control, but it was already too late.
True democracy is citizen-led. Politics needs an update. We demand a people's house. We demand a people's house. We are in crisis. We are in crisis. Our whole future is in jeopardy.
The Labour MPs seated behind Starmer looked visibly uneasy. One buried his face in a notepad, pretending to jot something down, while another clutched her phone as if the screen could shield her from the disaster playing out. Even his closest allies seemed desperate to vanish. Then came the breaking point. People began leaving. Whole rows stood up and walked out. Some muttered as they exited, while others made sure to boo one final time. The message was unmistakable. Starmer had lost the room completely, and there was no way back. This wasn't just a poor performance. It was the latest in a series of political blunders that have left his leadership hanging by a thread. Labour supporters, restless for months, now saw their worst fears confirmed. Starmer is disconnected from the very people he's meant to represent. His approach to Brexit has been disastrous. In 2016, he was a staunch Remain advocate, pushing for a second referendum. Now he wants the country to simply move on, hoping the past will be forgotten. But voters haven't forgotten. Pro-Brexit Labour members feel abandoned, while pro-Remain backers feel betrayed. He's succeeded in alienating both.
If he thinks that bothers me, he doesn't know me. Protest or power. That's why we changed our party conference. That's why we changed our party. Thank you.
Thank you. Starmer's economic agenda is packed with broad promises about stability and fiscal discipline, sounding more like a conservative pitch than a Labour vision. On foreign affairs, his refusal to support a ceasefire in Gaza has ignited anger within his own ranks. Veteran Labour supporters who once viewed the party as a voice for justice now feel led by someone playing it safe instead of standing up for principle. Behind closed doors, insiders are growing uneasy. There are murmurs of leadership challenges, and some MPs are already weighing their options. Starmer was supposed to be Labour's steady hand, the figure who could restore credibility and steer the party back into government, but the numbers suggest otherwise. Polling is slipping, and the Southport disaster only deepened the damage. If he doesn't reverse course soon, his leadership may not last much longer.
The first is on the question of terrorism and what constitutes terrorism. And my concern in this case is that we have clearly got an example of extreme violence, individualized violence, that we have to protect our children from and our citizens from. And it is a new threat. It's not what we would have usually thought of as terrorism when definitions were drawn up, when guidelines were put in place, when the framework was put in place. And we have to recognise that here today, because I think most people would say, looking at the facts of this case, it's clearly extreme violence, it's clearly intended to terrorise. And I completely accept and understand that, and that is my view. Therefore, we have to make sure that the law and the framework for responding is appropriate to the new threat that we face. And there we will make whatever changes are necessary in the law.
If the Southport speech wasn't enough, Keir Starmer's latest actions have left Labour supporters thoroughly puzzled. For years, the party presented itself as a strong opponent of Donald Trump, condemning his policies, divisive rhetoric, and global influence. Starmer had been outspoken in criticizing Trump's leadership, yet now he seems to be changing course. In a recent statement, he praised Trump's handling of certain international matters and even suggested closer cooperation with him. This is the same Trump Labour once called a threat to democracy. So what's shifted? That's the question many supporters are asking. Some MPs are furious, seeing it as a betrayal of core principles, while others remain cautious but clearly uneasy.
On the second point, yes, of course, I was kept up to date with the facts as they were emerging. That is usual practice. But just like you, as a journalist, I had to observe the law of the land. It was not my personal decision to withhold this information any more than it was a journalist's personal decision not to print or write about it. That is the law of the land that is in place for the reasons I've set out to protect the integrity of the system, to ensure that the victims and their families get the justice that they deserve.
Grassroots Labour members aren't just puzzled, they're furious. Social media is flooded with comments from lifelong supporters who feel the party is abandoning its core principles. If Starmer believes he can attract Conservative voters by shifting his stance, he's taking a major gamble. In trying to appeal to them, he risks alienating the very people who have supported Labour for decades. The party stands at a crossroads, grappling with its identity. Is it still a progressive, left-wing force championing social justice, or has it turned into a centrist machine, compromising for political convenience under Starmer's leadership? No one seems certain anymore, and that uncertainty could be devastating. Starmer is at a critical juncture. Can he recover, or has his strategy already sealed his fate? His team might dismiss this as a one-off, just a tough crowd or another minor setback. But that would be wishful thinking. This wasn't mere heckling. It was a loud, public rejection from the very supporters he needs. And it's not just a single bad incident. It's a growing trend, a steady erosion of loyalty that is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore.
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests, individuals will be held on remand, charges will follow, and convictions will follow. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online and then running away themselves. This is not protest. It is organised, violent thuggery.
Keir Starmer aimed to unify the Labour Party and win over voters, but he now faces one of the biggest challenges of his leadership. His recent speech, intended to inspire confidence, instead exposed deep divisions within the party and caused support to slip. Critics accuse him of betraying Brexit, and his shifting stance on foreign policy is making it harder for people to trust him. The boos in Southport weren't just about that single speech, they served as a stark warning. The pressing question now is, can Starmer recover, or is this the beginning of the end for Labour under his leadership? Will he adjust his approach, or will the backlash continue to grow? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this analysis useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more coverage on political controversies, major debates, and the stories often overlooked by the media.